Welcome to Dirk Island. We're talking about the new Netflix Black Mirror episode. What's it called? Black Viper or Viper Room? Viper Snatch? Striking Vipers. There's three. It's one of the 3 episodes they just released this season. This is one of my favorite TV shows, period. Definitely some of my favorite sci-fi. One of my favorite parts about Black Mirror is the really cool minimalist depictions of future technology. So you have best friends that are used to game with each other circa 2019, playing video games that are akin to what we have, and then we fast forward to 11 years in the future, and they're playing the new VR installment version of the same kind of like Tekken style fighting game, and it's so cool looking. Just they take a little chip that looks like about this big that they slide into the controller itself, no game console, and the VR extension is just this little dot, which we've seen in other episodes, that just goes by the temple and will kind of put them into a VR state through that, which just like I love right off the bat. Should we go into the whole? Yeah, let's go the whole thing.
Spoiler alert.
Spoilers and then, for this episode. It's a review.
And then these friends, one of whom is married, the other one's kind of playing the field with women. So when they play the video game for the first time, they are like, wow, this is amazing, testing out what it's like to be inside this video game. They start fighting for about a minute and very quickly tussle on top of each other and start making out aggressively. Like within about a minute of playing the video game, one of them is inhabiting a woman's body, the other is in a man's body. They do it for about 30 seconds and then they freak out and he's like, how the fuck do I get out of here? And they go, exit game. And what proceeds is like they start to have this relationship where they're not only fucking all the time in this video game without the guy's wife knowing, but they're having an intimate relationship.
What do you think of this? What do you think of this story?
I mean, I thought it was so... you can't fault them for being like really interesting idea, I thought. It was like what would the most extreme, because right now you probably have people on Pornhub who are like watching way too much Pornhub to the point that there are some studies that say it almost affects people's sexual health because from an early age they're just like porn addicted. And this was almost like a really interesting sci-fi, taking that concept and putting it on steroids and showing like the most intense version you could have, to the point that you've got a man who's married who prefers having sex with his best friend in a video game to having sex with his wife, which is like, I think, a pretty fascinating concept to explore in sci-fi.
This is interesting. I've seen people say that this episode is pretty mature for being about video games, which is kind of interesting because I was like, mature, Because I think that what it does explore is that people's sexuality is limited by possibilities. And perhaps that when the possibilities become more unlimited, perhaps human sexuality will become in itself more varied and more unlimited, which is an interesting concept. It's an interesting concept because these guys they become basically addicted to something that does not exist, and is kind of very weird and fucked up, right? It's very just strange that one of them, they're in video game characters who are fucking, and the guy's talking about fucking a bear at one point in time in this game. I fucked the bear character. He's trying to get there's these insane aspects of, but I think that the real gem of this episode and the real gem of my other favorite, it brings me back to my other favorite episode, my all-time favorite episode of Black Mirror, which is Recall, which is from the first season, and it is, in a way, almost a similar story. It's about a guy who has basically a memory device, basically an always recording eye, that he can see everything that's going on, so he can always look back on everything he's ever seen, and he can see, kind of sift through his memories. And he's also like a very inquisitive person, so he can basically unravel the story. And it's really a story about his wife has cheated on him, and he seems like an insane person he seems insane and weirdly suspicious and neurotic, because there's this scene in the beginning where they bring him in and he's recalling this job interview scenario that he's done, and he's like, should I have said it this way? Should I have said it this way? Should I have said it this way? Oh my god, I'm reading it back, and it's as if that person, it gives you that feeling of that person who just let it go, just let it go, it's fine, it'll be fine. Like, but the recall is allowing him to be a little bit neurotic. But then there's this story about he starts suspecting his wife or significant other from cheating on him. And what's so brilliant about that story is he does ultimately, through the technology, through finding something and then going, I believed you. Until then I looked back and I saw when you were talking about your memories, and I saw a picture of your memories, and I saw like our house with the other guy when I wasn't there. And it's like, so he uncovers a true cheating scandal story, a very interesting scandal, a real story, an emotionally connecting story in a future universe through a novel use of a future technology. And that is a true parallel to this episode. This episode is a cheating story about modern relationships, especially the end where they're basically saying that the wife is giving him a day off per year to go have sex in VR
with his friend while she gets to go and have sex with the guy in the real world.
Has a random night out. That's what I was thinking, like, oh, people are saying this is what modern things are like. Okay, I get, but the reality is modern things are like different for all people. But the story itself is very relatable because it's not so far from a regular story. It's a regular story playing out in a different context with a different set of technological rules. That's, I think, the best part of this episode.
Yeah, I thought it was a funny way to, I mean, there was something, I was watching it with my fiance Brooke, and she, when they start making out in the video game, and it's like, whoa, this is weird. And it's funny because you're watching just like a good-looking male actor and female actress, but I still felt it from the perspective of like the characters do. And there is something very provocative about the fact of sexuality being constrained, limited only by the possibilities that a straight as a straight male, would you have some alternate sexuality if VR truly was that sophisticated? That doesn't apply, and I kind of liked the decision where it wasn't that they were secretly closeted gay and they really were attracted to each other all along. It was that with this new extension of persona, they found a new aspect to their sexuality that kind of couldn't exist without it.
And I mean, it takes a lot of creative sleight of hand to make the story work. So I would say, why I say sleight of hand is one of the brilliant parts about this is that, so you're playing Mortal Kombat or one of these fighting games, and there is absolutely no problem at all being a man and choosing a female character, or being a female and choosing a male character, or being a man and choosing a bear character, an orc, or whatever the fuck.
I'm not fighters yet. So I am lock set. Okay.
It doesn't matter in the video game world what gender of video game character or whatever, or even species of video game character you have. It absolutely doesn't matter at all. So you pick these characters and you're like, of course the one friend could pick the female character. You don't, that's what I mean was a sleight of hand, because they get you in, you're like, of course, that's totally normal. The one guy could totally pick a female character, because in the video game world that's it. But then when he's in there, you're like, wait a second, so that guy is a woman.
Your chest is impressive? Check this shit out. Woo!
This is just...
I know, right?
Like, he's straight up like in a woman's body now as VR. Like, that actually is a lot different of an implication in VR than it would be in, it's assuming that it was like they tell it in the story, which is basically you have the experience of the entire body. You basically body transport, right? So it is just weird. It's weird to think about as a concept. They kind of, you get so, it's so not weird that he just picks a woman character, because obviously in video games you do, but then you miss the moment where you're like, wait a second, he is in a woman's body and he's a man. Like, that's actually quite novel, but we slip right past that because it actually needs to kind of go under the radar for a bit for the story to work. So anyway, it was pretty well done that way. And I think playing on the normal, just what we would assume as people who've played video games before, of course it's totally fine for that guy to pick a little lady as his character. Of course, that's totally fine. That's totally normal. Not thinking about the idea of, oh, this guy is now in a woman's body. And we never thought that was a different experience at all. So it was interesting.
Yeah, definitely. And I could imagine, I mean, it's kind of a cool technology. I hope that they maybe play with it in the future. I mean, you could almost see like he's in a woman's body, gets out, and all of a sudden he feels like the real world body is the one that's fucked up or that's wrong. There's a lot of kind of, it's a cool, that's my favorite sci-fi. Like, it's a great device to explore this modern theme of like basically the variability of gender identity and sexuality in ways that we think are concrete, that all of a sudden, instead of it just being someone who has a different gender identity, now all of a sudden it brings it to the entire. It doesn't matter who you are. Maybe this technology plays with that for every identity, every person, which I think is pretty. I mean, that's pretty great. I think it's a pretty clever concept.
I think it was great, and I think it plays into the same thing like the Ready Player One, where you're sitting there and you don't realize that, like, you look at something like World of Warcraft and someone picks like this, orc-like character or whatever they pick, and you're like, okay, it's just a video game. Like, it doesn't really matter. Like, I've picked someone with 5 arms, like, it's like, it doesn't matter at all in a video game when you're doing. But then you think about, like, wait, it's my avatar. Like, I'm actually inhabiting that body, and like, maybe I actually would want like some fucking giant guy, like a lot of people pick in whatever that Ready Player One thing is, where there's some people who basically their caricature in that movie is their worst, is whatever they would really want to be like, and some people pick, like, the main character picks like a very normal sized, reasonably sized guy, but like one person picks a lot of people pick just giant people, just like they want to be like a giant, and they're, the Captain Business, whatever evil corporate guy picks a guy in a suit who's like really ripped with a big jaw. It's like, But anyway, it's like it's interesting because it does play with the idea of imagine if it got that way. You could both, one, see the theme that we've seen before in like real Ready Player One, or people talk about, is that the video game world could become so compelling that why would you even leave that world? It could become so compelling. But then the other thing is like the emptiness of it. What?
Seriously a danger.
Yeah, perhaps.
I mean, I partly don't. There's a part of me that doesn't even want. I don't own a console, and I don't even want to start because there's a part of me that's scared of just spending way too much time.
Yeah, it's another possible addiction. But I mean, anyway. Yeah, people love it. It's
already competitive with real life for some.
Yeah, it's a great genre of sci-fi. Okay, anything more else to say on this one?
No, that's it. I think it's worth watching.
Okay, yeah, definitely. I think it's worth watching also. Okay, thanks very much for watching us. If you want to keep up here, we usually watch documentaries. I tell you about the good stuff that we're watching. Please subscribe on YouTube if you want to keep up, or on Apple Podcasts for the podcast version. Thanks very much.
Thank you.